Oi, gente, boa noite, tudo bem? Eu sou Giovana, participo aqui da organização. A gente só vai passar primeiro um vídeo de seguranças do auditório e aí depois disso a gente vai já começar a palestra. A palestra ela vai ser em inglês, mas os slides vão ser em português. Se alguém tiver alguma dúvida e não quiser falar em português, tudo bem, eu vou estar aqui. E a gente também vai ter algumas pessoas que vão traduzir se vocês não quiserem falar inglês, tá bom? E é isso, fiquem à vontade.
Bem-vindo ao auditório Camila Bueno. Para que você possa desfrutar ao máximo deste evento, passaremos algumas informações de segurança. Nosso auditório possui extintores em locais estratégicos, detectores de fumaça e, na falta de energia elétrica, as luzes se acenderão automaticamente. As saídas de emergências estão localizadas nas laterais do palco e no fundo da sala, com portas corta-fogo e barras antipânico. Se necessário, basta empurrá-las. Os acessos estão sinalizados com placas de rota de fuga. Em caso de qualquer eventualidade, mantenha calma e aguarde orientações da Brigada de Incêndio, bombeiros ou da nossa equipe de segurança. Observe avisos de não fumar e lembre-se de desligar o aparelho celular ou deixá-lo em modo silencioso. Mantenha consigo objetos pessoais. Desejamos a todos um bom evento.
Tá bom, gente. Muito obrigada pela presença de todos. A gente vai respeitar quem chegou aqui na hora certa. Daqui a pouco vão chegar mais pessoas. Então, eu gostaria de apresentar, por favor, nosso palestrante, Ryan. Ele é da equipe do BMJ e ele veio junto com o Douglas também, também dos Estados Unidos do BMJ. E a nossa intermediária brasileira é a Júlia. Por favor, uma salva de palmas para todos eles. Be my guest. So I just introduced you and said that we are starting the lecture.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone. Good evening. How are you? Good. Speak English? Yes, perfect. Thank God. Okay. So first and foremost, thank you to Giovanna, to Rodrigo, and the rest of the team for inviting us over here. I'm really excited to be talking about BMJ with you all. Are you familiar with BMJ? Oh, good. This makes it so much funner, so much better. Perfect. So thank you for having us and inviting us. Albert Einstein, also, the institution, has been a long-standing customer of ours, so we appreciate any time that we can come over here and take advantage and meet with you all, because you are all of our users. You're the reason why we are here today, so thank you all. And I don't need too much of a reason to come to Brazil. I love coming over here, so it's always nice and very welcoming to eat the food and drink the drinks. So yeah, very nice. And we have my colleagues over there. I believe Giovanna mentioned that if you do have any questions in Portuguese, we'll be able to address those at the end of the presentation. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation and just say, Ryan, slow down, or I didn't get that, or can you repeat that, please let me know, all right? So this hour is for you guys. So I'm glad that you are familiar with BMJ. I'm really happy to hear that. But today we're going to guide you through a couple of resources and products that you may already have access to and you may already be using on your day-to-day learning environment, right? You're going to see a couple of slides on our history. I may ask you a question. There might be a pop quiz. I know you guys are probably tired of taking tests, but we'll do an easy test from the beginning and see if you get that answer correctly. There might be a prize. Do we have anything to give away? There won't be a prize, but you get bragging rights. So throughout our history, actually this month makes a very special, it's very meaningful for BMJ because about 2 weeks ago, we celebrated 183 years since we published that very first article that you see on the left-hand side. We were previously known before BMJ as that, and our name has evolved over the 183 years. But October 14th was the very first time that we published an article, so we've been doing it for quite some time. And I think because of that, and because the many moments throughout our history that we have participated in the advancement of medicine and the advancement of science, has created BMJ being one of the most trusted, one of the most respected, one of the most impactful sources of medical knowledge in the world. And that's thanks in large part to you. But I think that there are many examples as to why we got to where we are today, but I want to share three different points throughout our history that have really cemented that sort of respect that BMJ has. If you're familiar with the peer review process, back in the 1890s, we were one of the first scientific publishers to say, hey, if we're going to put out scientific knowledge, especially in medicine that has the probability to save someone's life, we think that it should be reviewed by professionals as well, right? And today, I was upstairs and I saw that there was a lecture on the scientific method, but that's part of it. It needs to be revised and reviewed by professionals. BMJ was actually one of the first scientific publishers to say this needs to be standard. And as you know, especially throughout the pandemic, vetted scientific information needs to be peer reviewed. Are you familiar with evidence-based medicine? Let me see if I can pronounce that. Medicina basada en evidencias. 100 years later, back in the 1990s, BMJ was the very first medical publisher to stand behind this important movement. One of the most important movements of modern medical history. BMJ, back in 1994, published that article that you see right there. Today, it's one of the most read articles, even though it's over 30 years old. But that article was published by Dr. David Sackett. If you're familiar with EBM, that name might sound familiar because he's one of the fathers of EBM. And through that collaboration, we really expanded the view of the importance of evidence-based medicine. And we know that today, it's one of the key components, right, of staying on top, updated with everything that's going on and getting published. That collaboration led to Dr. David Sackett also being the first editor-in-chief of Evidence-Based Medicine, a journal that's part of our collection. Many of you probably have already read it. You may have already even read this article that has impacted medicine for quite some time. And then BMJ also, another kind of part in our history, was the very first medical journal to go completely online. I know now it sounds like no big deal, but back then, back in 1996, I believe, it was a big deal, right? Because before you would kind of have to wait for the printed copy and dust off some of the dust and read it. But now, obviously, it's just part of our history. Everything is completely online. But being at the forefront of technology and how that has helped evidence, helped medicine, and everything that you see today, we were a pioneer in that movement. And I think that that's the reason why we have such impressive and impactful figures throughout our history. And this is, again, many thanks to you, countries all over the world, users all over the world coming onto our platforms to stay on top of the latest research, the latest evidence, new advancements. You can see the number on the left-hand side. Our content is available in over 20 different languages. We do have different clinical decision support tools that are completely translated into Portuguese. Well, there's one, but I'll talk about that in a second. But you can see that the BMJ, which is our flagship product, still retains its number 4 as the most cited general medical journal in the world. It is one of the most respected, one of the oldest, and still maintaining that position in the top 5 of most important medical journals in the world. You can see that we partner with over 11,000 institutions around the world as well. So we have pretty much almost in every country, we have customers that at least subscribe to one of our resources. But I think the number in the middle, the 10 million online users every single month coming onto our resources, I think that's probably the most impressive. A couple of years ago, that number was around 5 million, but because of the pandemic and because we were one of the first publishers to start publishing content on COVID, that number skyrocketed to over 10 million users, and that still has maintained throughout all these years. But let's look at that little box in the middle for Brazil, because we're all here and we want to know, how does Brazil stack up to the rest of the world? You can see that you're the 14th globally in terms of journal readership from around the world. So think about how many countries there are. Brazil's number 14 when it comes to reading our content. The BMJ app, available on your Androids and iPhone devices, you are in the top 10 most active users of the BMJ app. In fact, can anybody guess what number you are? Any number. Top 10. What do you think? You. Close, 9. But you just cracked the top 10. And then you can see this year to date, over 85,000 users throughout Brazil have come onto our platform. So making you, honestly, one of the most active users when compared to the rest of the world being in the top 20. Our journals, besides the BMJ, have had significant impact throughout our history as well. And here at Albert Einstein, and I know that you might be from other institutions as well, you'll have access to these journals, the majority of these journals, through the CAPES license as well. Some of these journals are really, really important. As you can see here, some of them rank number 1, number 2, number 3 in the top 5 of their respected category. You can see when it comes to sports medicine, we publish the British Journal of Sports Medicine. That is number 1 in sports medicine. So if you want to stay on top of advancements in sports medicine, like in soccer, I'm from Miami, so I think we have a famous soccer player now in Miami. I forgot his name. Messi. So he's amazing. But you can see that the journals form part of the core offerings that BMJ offers. You might be familiar with some of these journals. You might have not even known that they're part of our collection. In total, we have over 65 titles within our collection. These are just a few of the highlights to see how respectable and how impactful we are when it comes to the other specialty journals that we publish, the BMJ being right there in the middle, being number 4, with an impact factor of over 105. That's pretty impressive. There's also this whole movement and this whole discussion on impact and the importance of impact and what does that mean. If you take a look at some of these numbers, I think this is pretty impressive also. You can see that 14,000 articles were cited in over 6,000 policy and clinical guidance documents published in 2022. That is extremely significant. How many of you are interested in getting published? How many have been published in one way, shape, or form? Yeah? Maybe a little bit? Cool. Congrats. That is hopefully the end result when it comes to medicine, right? How does your research, what's the impact of it? How does it impact each and every one of us in this room, right? When it comes to medicine and research. That is pretty impressive. You can see that there were over 770,000 mentions of articles just published in 2022 alone. This number over here, almost 35,000 news mentions. That is a new high for BMJ. I've seen colleagues have sent me like commercials and newscasts and like news posts from Brazil mentioning studies from the BMJ. And you can see that number 35,000 last year is pretty significant. We are, like I said from the beginning, one of the most cited publishers. You can see we're number 11 in clinical medicine and number 8 in public health. But how does that look like over here in Brazil also? I think that this is also pretty impressive because you can see that Brazilian authors, all based here, have had impact by publishing through our journals around the world as well. And you can see that almost 500, so 456 articles that were published within the past couple of years have made its way in over 1,500 policy documents around the world. So some of your studies that you're doing and hopefully want to get published at a certain point, hopefully in BMJ journals, but in any journal, but you can see that even just with our portfolio of journals, you've made its way into ministries of health from around the world, in Argentina, over in Australia, throughout Africa, throughout Asia. Really, really impressive stuff that's happening here in Brazil. Keep up the great work. Are there any questions? Anything that stands out that's kind of interesting that you didn't know? No? When did we start publishing? Does anybody know? Does anyone remember the year? I hear it. Don't be shy. 1840? Yeah? Nobody gets a prize. Forget it. That's it. Let's keep going. So, the previous slide talks about publishing, right, and the impact that you have. But we know when it comes to publishing that there are significant challenges, right? Especially when it comes to doing research and conducting research, not knowing many of the methodology, right, and some of the skills that you need to properly conduct research, and then see it all the way to get published creates a very, very scary statistic that you can see up there. 85% of medical research is wasted. The reason being the majority of it just never gets published at all. And then when you start looking at all the other reasons that trickle down to create that statistic right there, you can see that a lot of those challenges, a lot of the problems when it comes to getting published can be easily fixed if some of that knowledge is learned right from the very beginning. And this number kind of inspired Dr. Trish Groves. She was the former editor-in-chief of BMJ Open, and she's the editorial lead for Research the Publication. It is a collaboration that's completely unique between a medical publisher and a pretty significant institution, the University of California, San Francisco. They have created this online learning module course called Research to Publication that essentially guides you from the perspective of an institution that's responsible for nearly 10% of all scientific output in the world. So they are literally doing this research that literally 10% gets published from them globally. And also from the perspective of a medical publisher that's been publishing since when? 1840, yes. I'm gonna get you guys to answer that question soon enough. Weaving in that perspective is what makes this completely unique, because you really do get to see from both sides how to properly conduct research and then see it get published in an international journal. The whole purpose of Research to Publication is to get you to get published in any scientific journal, not necessarily BMJ, but in any. We would want you to publish in our journals. But you can see right here, there's 8 courses following the scientific research cycle, 52 modules in total. These modules have quizzes, they have presentations, they have videos, they have images, they have a bunch of content to make the online learning more engageful. And you can see that those modules that are in blue are written from the BMJ or the editorial perspective, teaching you on how to get published. Those that are in green are coming from UCSF, the Faculty of Medicine and Research, and giving you that research sort of perspective from their point of view. Really, really great resource, Research the Publication. You can see that while the objective is to get you to get published at the end of it, users that you do utilize Research the Publication and have a study in mind or are already halfway through are also entitled to receive a significant discount off of the article processing charges. How many of you are familiar with open access? Have you heard of open access when it comes to journals? Yeah, a little bit, maybe so. Okay. Open access is essentially creating scientific research free to anyone to read, right? So before, you would need a subscription in order to read certain articles, and that's why Albert Einstein and Capes, for example, subscribes to our content. But there's been this huge movement that science should be free in many ways. Anybody should access it. So if my grandmother wants to read something on COVID, and she's 93 years old, she's more than welcome to read some of our open access content if she'd like. And essentially, what this does is provide an opportunity to not only learn how to conduct research and get it published, but then that opportunity to get that discount to publish in an open access article. Otherwise, that cost would be on you or the institution, but there is a nice discount, 45% there. Like I said, even though the objective is to get published in any journal, this will be specific to BMJ's portfolio, those 60 plus titles that we have in our content. So pretty good stuff. And of course, I can stand here and talk about it all day long, but it's pretty late, right? So we want to get some dinner. There are customers throughout the world utilizing this. I put this study up from UNAM in Mexico City. We followed the cycle of 2 different researchers 2 years after they took Research the Publication to kind of see where they were at in their journey. We had one researcher that had never published before that went on to publish already. We had another researcher that had published before in like local journals and went on to publish in JAMA after taking the course. So it's not just increasing the quantity of the articles, it's improving the quality. Yes, it's improving the quality of the articles. So not just get published in local journals, but get published in JAMA. We've seen users get published in the BMJ, in NEJM, so there you go. You can take a picture of that QR code and you can take a look at that study and sort of take a look at their journey and see how it impacted them. It's really, really cool. Take a picture? Yeah, good. I'm gonna leave it for a second. I believe these slides are going to be circulated anyway, so if you do want access to it, you'll have access to that. How many of you are familiar with BMJ best practice? If you're at Albert Einstein, yeah, some users of our clinical decision support tool, great. Albert Einstein is a customer of BMJ best practice. BMJ best practice is literally our point of care tool. But what makes it completely unique here in Brazil is that it's completely translated into Portuguese. So it does a much better job than me communicating this information to you in local language. But BMJ Best Practice launched about 15 years ago, and you can see that we are in countries all over the world. That clinical decision support, there are other tools out there, but this one is truly unique here in Brazil because it is in Portuguese, but the actual structure of the content, I'll show you that in a second. Take a look at the app, BMJ Best Practice. It is the highest clinical decision support tool, the highest rating, both on the App Store and the Google Play Store. If you don't believe me, take a look at it and you'll see. If you're within the IP range, you can just download it right now and start using it. And you can see that there's over 50 countries that partner with BMJ Best Practice to deliver and provide this resource to their end users. But I mentioned earlier that it is completely translated into Portuguese, making this tool unique for you. Like I said before, if you are in Albert Einstein, you do have access to this resource, which has been an incredible resource. I took a look at the usage of Albert Einstein alone, thousands of sessions every year. The vast majority are actually on the app. And what makes BMJ Best Practice unique is that every single topic, every single disease follows the actual clinical workflow of the actual patient consultation. So everything is structured in such a way that if you want to find answers as quickly as possible, you can literally Google diabetes, get onto BMJ Best Practice, look at the topic for diabetes, and then jump into the differentials for the proper diagnoses, for example. You can jump into the management of a patient with diabetes and look at the treatment recommendations, all based on evidence, of course. Following that structure makes this tool extremely quick. When you compare it to other tools that might look like an encyclopedia, let's just say, very, very dense with information, if you are pressed for time, this is a tool to use. There's other characteristics that make the tool stand out, but really those two things, that it's available in Portuguese and also its unique structure, right? Finding those answers as quickly as possible. You can read over here that there's some other features, but our most proudest feature, this is what I was talking about. So if you see this particular disease, you can see that it follows that structure from theory, diagnoses, treatment, follow-up, and then additional resources. This is what makes that platform completely unique. You can literally just jump into the different sections, find those clinical answers as quickly as possible. So if you are studying, or if you actually have a patient in front of you, this is going to help support you find that as quickly as possible and then get back to what you were doing previously. No need to spend and read a ton of content. Our most proudest advancement, let's just say, or update to the tool is now the ability to look at the treatment algorithm and add comorbidities to the treatment recommendations. It is the only tool that gives you the perspective to treat the entire patient. Studies have shown that as we get older, I'm getting older next year. Anyways, we'll talk about that later over drinks. But the chances of you suffering from multiple chronic conditions increases as well, to the point where over 30% of patients over the age of 50 suffer from at least 3 chronic conditions. So if you have a patient that comes into the hospital for COVID, let's just say, or pneumonia, you might start treating, right, the patient with COVID, but what if they have diabetes? What if they also have a stroke, let's just say? How do you treat a patient that's suffering from COVID, but also keeping in mind that they might have other conditions as well? Because by treating one thing, you can make the other thing worse, right? This is the only tool that's going to give you, in the unique treatment algorithm, you can see wherever there's a C sign for comorbidities, giving you the option of seeing, okay, if I'm treating this patient with COVID and they have diabetes, I need to take a look at both things. This is truly unique and something that we really just are very, very proud of. The comorbidities that are included, you can see the top list all the way at the top over there. It's 10 of the most common, most likely to cause harm comorbidities are included here. So these are the ones that you see day to day in the hospital setting. These are the ones that are most likely the patients will suffer. We started with about 50 topics 2 years ago when we launched this. We're now at 100 topics. It might seem like a little, but those 100 topics have literally thousands and thousands of combinations in the treatment algorithm. This is a very, very dense project, but again, super unique, giving you that ability to treat the entire patient. And I think that it's always important to understand and hear from our users. And I appreciated Giovanna telling me that you use BMJ best practice and you guys love BMJ, you two over there. I always like to hear from our users. So if you are using our tools, please let me know, because I want to hear from you how we can advance it, make it better, or if we're actually doing a good job. It's also great to hear that too. But there's a researcher here, Dr. Croda, who went to La Universidad Federal de Mato Grosso do Sul, I have no idea if I said that right, who just a couple of years ago published an article. And that article was published in the BMJ, and that article influenced policy here in Brazil. But what was interesting is that that little article went and influenced policy in Europe, in Asia, in Australia as well. He had no idea that his research, he knew that it impacted policy in Brazil. He had no idea that it made its way across the pond and impacted the world. So decisions that are made every single day when it comes to COVID, he had some impact on that. And I think that that is incredible. And you can see his sort of perspective on the importance of having access to resources like BMJ, resources like different point of care tools, the journals that we talked about, resources like Research the Publication. I saw many hands come up that you were very interested at a certain point to get published. Use these resources day to day. So most of these are already available to you. If they are not, knock on your library's door and ask them that, hey, why don't we have access to this, and see if Julia can help us with that over there. But I always like to end things by bringing in the user perspective, right? And just hearing from them what the impact has been. Yeah, do you have a question? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so through your institution, most of our journals you probably have access to already. The other resources like best practice or Research the Publication, it's like we would work with the institution to provide access to everyone. So I'm sure Julia would be very happy to speak to whoever at your librarian. You know, we always kind of go through that route, but if there's anybody else that you say like, hey, we should have some of these other resources because some of our students in other institutions have access to it, you know, that could be a nice route. But good question.
So, okay.
Hi.
So I individually as a student can't subscribe.
You do have access to subscribe to some of our tools individually, like BMJ Best Practice. So there is individual subscriptions, and there are discounts for students as well.
Okay.
So you can do that, but if your school can pay for it,
that'll be better.
Get the school to pay for it.
Got it. Thank you.
Some of our journals also have individual subscriptions, but yeah, Research the Publication is only institutional.
Right. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions, preguntas? I was told that this was not a shy group, that you guys were fuming with questions. So is there anything else that I can help with? Any questions that you have about BMJ, either our journals, any of the tools that you heard from this evening? You guys are just mesmerized by all the information. Yes? You feel good? Yes. Oh, thank you.
You said something about us liking to publish. So we have to finish the school, or we can publish while studying, like during the school.
So, for example, with Research the Publication to get like that discount
in BMJ, like
to publish?
Specifically in BMJ.
So your question is, can you publish while you're in school?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a student edition of the BMJ. We also have a unique product called BMJ Case Reports, which is the largest journal of its kind with the most clinical cases. There's almost 30,000. That is a great way to get your feet wet of the publication process. It's called BMJ Case Reports. Take a look at that, because if you do have a particular case that you're working on, a real life case, and there's something peculiar, that's a great resource to have, and that's a great way to get published in an international journal like BMJ Case Reports. It still goes through the peer review process, but there are built-in resources for the authors, I'll get to your question in a second, that are going to help you increase the chances of getting published in case reports. There's about a 38% acceptance rate, which is pretty high. To get published in the BMJ, just to give you an example, is about a 3% acceptance rate. So case reports is a great way to kind of start getting your feet wet when it comes to publishing. Giovanna?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the other question, because here at Albert Einstein, we have a student that is doing a scientific initiation about neurology in palliative care, and it's in the process of being published in the BMJ journal.
Do you know which journal, or the BMJ, or?
The student only told me BMJ.
Yes,
That's all I know about.
It sounds like maybe supportive and palliative care, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. She's the student.
You are the student. Congratulations. Nice. Is there any advice that you would like to tell your peers?
I think the no is already there, so just email every new paper you can. Just go.
That's good advice. The no, you're gonna get a no, even if you don't try. So try. Yeah. Is there any resource that you used? Any advice? Do you have like a faculty member that's part of your mentor, or?
I think if your project and your research is good, there's no reason to be denied. So just go. Just be confident about your study and publish there.
Good advice. Thank you. Any other questions? Obrigado. Any other questions? Anything else? Yeah, right over here.
So you were talking about research to publication, the platform by USCSF, but does anyone have access to it, or do you have to pay? Like, how would you actually start using the platform?
So we have one free module that you can take, but it is only available for institutional subscriptions. So if you do want to partake in the entire course, it's something that we would work with your institution. Are you at Albert Einstein or somewhere else? Yeah. We would work with the institution to see if we can implement that tool. It is a great resource. You took a picture of the QR code. We can use that, to speak to. Do you have a library at your institution? We can talk to them. Julia. They need research to publication. Thank you for your question. Was there another one over here somewhere? Yeah.
Here. Hi.
Hi.
How does the BMJ best practice tool impact the number of medical professionals needed and the duration of the consultations?
How does it impact?
Yes.
So it's used literally at the point of care. There's no other tool like it. So what we hear from residents, medical students, doctors, nurses, is the ability to find that answer as quickly as possible. So when they are doing their clinical rounds, when they're literally in front of a patient, they take out their phone because it's available on the app. It's already included to find it as quickly as possible. We have studies on the actual platform. We have case studies of users from around the world on how it's helped them literally save lives, especially with the comorbidities manager. If they have access to that portion of the treatment algorithm, it's been completely a game changer. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Maybe
Thank you.
A little bit? Okay. Another question. Thank you for your question. Hi.
So in regards to the BMJ case report,
Yeah?
what do I have to know before I start gathering evidence for a case report? Do I have to have a focus of the case report, or can I make a case report that's very general and not focused on any particular area in medical specialties?
Good question. All right, so I'm going to try to answer that. Case report has built-in resources already that are going to help guide you throughout the entire process. But I'll say I'm friends with the editor-in-chief. She's my BFF. So no, but her perspective, she's been the editor-in-chief since the journal launched. She wants to know, what are you going to teach me? What is unique about this particular case? And can I learn something? Even if it's, most people think case reports and they think really, really rare conditions. And yes, that is important to share with the world. But even if there's unique presentations to more common conditions, if I can learn something new from a patient that has Zika, I don't know, she wants to publish it. She'll even accept, I mean, she's really passionate about case reports. Again, it's the largest of its kind, but she'll even accept handwritten drawings, because if it makes sense and I can learn something, she's going to publish it. So you go to BMJ Case Reports, casereports.bmj.com, take a look. There's a section for authors there, and it literally tells you, what do we want to publish? And it's going to give you and guide you, give you those ideas on like, oh, there is something pretty unique about this case. Maybe I should publish it. Maybe I should share it with the world. You never know. I will say that if you are interested in publishing in case reports, have the patient sign the consent form. That is a requirement for case reports. So if you have something in mind, get the patient to sign it. It's super quick. It's just to protect you, the institution, and the patient as well. That's probably one of the main reasons why papers get rejected in case reports, is because they don't have patient consent. That is a requirement. So that's my tip to you.
Thank you.
Casereports.bmj.com. Take a look at it. And yeah, hi.
Yeah, I have a question. So when you show the 85%,
yeah.
Do you think like there's a relation like between the money it costs to publish? Like it's not free. It's the movement of getting free. It's for the person who's going to read it with open access, and etc. But like for the researcher to publish it, it costs like a lot of money. So do you think there's like a solution for this? Like what is the solution?
The traditional route of getting published, there is no cost, right? So it's, if you want to make that article open access, then that cost is responsible. The author needs to be paid for. Sometimes institutions or the author themselves with the team that they're working might have a grant, and the grant will cover the portion of getting published. The institution might have funds set aside to get published as well. So I'd say reach out to your librarian and see, what are the options of getting published? Is there a fund? Is there something that I should look at? But the traditional route, there is no cost. So yeah, so just keep that in mind, but good question. Most of the barriers that created that number is that literally half of research is never published at all. There's no even an intent. You just said, you're going to get a no anyways, try it. So that's one of the main reasons. But then you look at all the other reasons for rejections, things like there wasn't enough evidence, your study wasn't replicable, right? The question wasn't strong enough. It wasn't written with the intended audience in mind. It was submitted to the completely wrong journal. Things like that get in the way of sharing that research. Those are things that those modules are going to cover. How to deal with rejection from the peer review process, right? How to deal with finding the right journal. What's the difference between a predatory journal and a peer-reviewed scientific journal from a reputable publisher? How can I identify the differences between that? So yeah, good question. There's a lot. Yes. Oh, hi. Hi, Julia.
Sobre a pergunta dele, né, sobre publicar e o peso que isso é para o pesquisador, muitas vezes, existe todo um movimento, né, e um novo modelo também de negócio que se chama Read and Publish, né, para ler e publicar. E aqui o hospital, né, o Albert Einstein, ele oferece alguns acordos com editoras para que vocês publiquem sem custos. Né? Então, vale a pena se informar na biblioteca para ver que tipo de editoras e quais revistas estão disponíveis para que os pesquisadores ou, enfim, alunos, né, que façam iniciação científica possam publicar sem custos. Né? Então, é um tipo de acordo que aqui o hospital já possui. né? Bom, o próprio BMJ também possui um modelo dessa forma para ler e publicar, que dá tanto acesso ao conteúdo da revista, quanto também a possibilidade de vocês publicarem sem custo, né? Então, são novos acordos, novas modalidades de acordos entre instituição e editora que estão aí disponíveis, né? Então, como eu falei, o Einstein já tem alguns acordos, o BMJ oferece esse tipo de acordo, ainda não tem com o Einstein, mas oferece esse tipo de acordo, e eu espero que, num futuro próximo, também a CAPES possa ter esse tipo de acordo com editoras. É uma coisa que a CAPES, é um tipo de modelo que a CAPES também já vem estudando para poder oferecer. Eu imagino que vocês estejam familiarizados com o portal de periódicos da CAPES. Vocês conhecem? Não? Bom, a CAPES ela tem um portal de periódicos que todos os journals da BMJ, por exemplo, eles estão no portal de periódicos para o acesso de vocês, né? E a CAPES ela vem estudando também a possibilidade de incluir a publicação nesses acordos. Então, além de acesso às revistas, vocês também poderiam publicar, né? Enfim, a gente pode, né, ter essa conversa também. Com certeza é uma conversa que eu vou ter com a biblioteca aqui do Einstein em breve. Só um adicional.
Everything she said. Yes, I agree. See. Thank you, Julia. Any other questions about any product, any resources that you saw? Yeah, we have another one.
Hey, good evening.
Hi.
We were just wondering here, we were talking about while you were talking about BMJ, if you guys have any sort of internship for like medical students to learn more specifically what are your main goals, or just to, you know, have some sort of more specific knowledge about it.
Yes and no, but we were just talking about this earlier, about the opportunity of partnering with institutions. So earlier this year, we did partner with an institution in Latin America, and we brought a couple of students over to BMJ headquarters in London, and they spent a week with me. They loved it. But they got to meet all my colleagues over there from the editorial team, clinical directors, users of our products, and they spent that whole week learning about what goes into the publication process, what goes into the decisions that are made and what to publish, what not to publish. What are some of the challenges that are coming forth with technology? I mean, it was really, really insightful and really, really cool. I don't think we have an internship per se. We do have like marketing stuff sometimes and sales, things like that. I think you do have to be based in the UK for that, but we want to change that. So if this is something that you guys are interested, you never know. It's like my friend just said over there. It's a no if you don't ask. So maybe we can change that. Good question. Anything else? Yes, see.
So I have a question. Mostly we see clinical research on BMJ. Is there any room for basic research? Is something you guys want to conquer, or is this far away from your goals?
I don't think I can answer that question truthfully and honestly. I'm not on the editorial side. Take a look at our journals and see what gets published. I mean, the BMJ can be very specific in general medicine. Some of our more specialty specific journals might have that opportunity. I was speaking to a professor. She was the professor, right? Yeah, she's interested in quality improvement, right? So quality improvement projects, we have a journal that focuses on publishing that. So give me your email. I think I have it, and maybe we can talk about this.
Nice.
At a later point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Here.
See, hi.
It's not clear for me yet. Me as a doctor in the future, I cannot use the platform without institution behind it.
Depending on where you're at. So you saw that we do partner with a lot of institutions around the world, so over 11,000. So depending on where you end up working, there's probably a chance that they have access to some resources. Maybe not everything, but there's probably a high probability that they might have access to some of our journals. When it comes to BMJ best practice, right, the clinical decision support tool, that's something that we can partner with the institution and see if they would want to subscribe to a tool like that as well. So it's kind of a yes or no question, but I did mention that there is a student version of BMJ best practice that has a yearly sort of subscription. You know, if you yourself want access to it and your institution's not going to support you, you can go that route. But I'd say push the institution to give you these resources, right? Because the more resources you have, especially coming from reputable and trusted, you know, organizations, the better it is for your career, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answered your question. All right, we are wrapping up. I appreciate your time. I really do. I appreciate all your questions. I think we got to all of them. I want to hear from you. So my contact information is up there, rrodriguez@bmj.com. Reach out to me if you have any other questions. It's always great to be here and really just hear from you, your perspectives, your challenges, your enthusiasm. And again, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a little late, but I really, really appreciate this and really, really appreciate this opportunity. So, obrigado.
Oi, gente. A gente vai ter um intervalo agora até às 8h50. 8h50 a gente vai ter mais uma rodada de palestras. Vai ter um pequeno coffee lá em cima, no mesmo lugar que teve o primeiro intervalo. E é isso, obrigada.
Obrigada, gente. Queríamos agradecer a presença rapidinho.
Do Ryan.
We just want to thank Ryan's presence and also all his crew. So that's it.
Thank you.